even though it is the dominant conference, we all know that, and it has been so for a long time. Well, not a long, long time, but for a good amount of time. Even though it's a dominant conference, the SEC, is still very regional in a way. Like the West is still the West, and the East is still the East. And then there's Florida down here in Florida, because Florida is different from everywhere else. I actually tweeted something yesterday, about how Florida is different, and it was this baby alligator, it was probably about 3 feet long, walking across a road with 6, I think there were storks or something behind it, walking with them. This was a real thing happening in Florida. We're different from everybody else. But you still want to make sure that you get the best teams in your playoff game or your championship game, because if you don't, you could, it could cost you a playoff spot. Even though with 12 playoff games, it feels like everybody's getting in. There's 12 out of, 130 teams. This isn't the NHL. I didn't even realize this. The NHL, the Montreal Canadiens are in the Stanley Cup Finals, and we find out tonight who they're playing, which I might actually watch. I don't watch a lot of hockey. I may watch that. But the Canadiens are in. They lost 60% of their games in the regular season. Can you imagine that? We're sitting here and you're like, you lose one game in college football and you're out. You're out of the playoffs. But that's not going to be the case, obviously, once this goes forward. So this will be really interesting to see how many schools decide, or not schools, but conferences decide to get rid of the playoffs. Now, of course, the Big 12 already doesn't have that situation. They don't have. They take their best 2 teams and they play it off. And you may see more conferences go to that. Like, I can see the ACC doing that, because in the ACC, obviously right now, you have Clemson and then you have the other division, and the other division often has a team that's maybe not a top 12, so that you get a little bit nervous there about making sure you get 2 teams in. Like Clemson would be in anyway, they just might not have a bye if they lost that conference championship game. On the other hand, you can't look at everything as if it's only right now. Like right now, Clemson is dominating that conference. It's ridiculous. I mean, totally dominating it. Well, it wasn't that long ago that people talked about Clemsoning and how if you blew it, you were Clemson. That's what Clemson did. Florida was a dominant force in the SEC, obviously, through the Spurrier years, and then during Urban Meyer. Hadn't been dominant for a long time. Just finally got back into the SEC championship game. Georgia's kind of had the East. So we'll see whether that happens. Like last year, if you had that, Florida would not have been in the championship game if you just had the best 2 teams. It would have been Alabama and Texas A&M. They were the 2 highest-ranked teams. So Florida wouldn't have made it. But Florida did make it because they had won the East, even with that crushing loss to LSU. Is any of this making sense at all? I'm just wondering. So we've got all that going on. We will get to all the other things we do. The Adams Ribco to go. Mount Rushmore is going to be men's golf this week. And then next week, we already talked about what we're going to do for next week. By the way, Monday, Cole Kubelik is going to join us on the show. And I'm working on a second guest right now. And then Tuesday, we're bringing on Friday. Get my days mixed up, but Friday show will be great because it is the start of a new month, and it means we're going to bring on a new sponsor, Shaq Allen Mercadante, and Steve Mercadante is going to sit in with us for a little bit. Of course, Steve was a baseball player at the University of Florida and at St. John's River Community College, fighting Vikings. And then we'll have another former Viking on. Robbie Andrew will join us on. So we'll have some great guests going on. Let's take a quick break because I got to find out where Zach is, and it's kind of important. He could be in the middle of trying to do some recruiting, but I mean, he's not doing the recruiting. He's trying to follow the recruiting. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more on the Dooley Noted Podcast.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from Another Dooley Noted Podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where, everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it. This is Pat Dooley, and I want to tell you about my friends at the Gainesville Quarterback Club. I'm a member, and you should be too. It's the oldest Gator booster club in the world and a great place to meet new friends, network with prominent business people, and hear a great collection of speakers, including Dan Mullen, throughout the football season. Go ahead and give John Stevens a call at 352-222-8516 or sign up on the website, quarterbackclub.org. Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI, and to our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. All right, and welcome back to Another Dooley Noted Podcast. Zach will be on in just a minute. And again, at the bottom of the hour, Ralph Russo, the AP college football writer. Can't wait to hear what he's got to say about all the stuff that's going on. It is crazy. In fact, I'm doing a story for the alumni newsletter, which I love writing for them. We have great conversations about what to write about on the changing landscape and how all these different things have happened. But I'm a big believer that at the end of the day, you can only put 11 players on the field. And you ain't going to be able to put more players on the field just because you have NIL, and transfer portal. Don't forget, you can watch us live, which you may be doing right now on Facebook and YouTube. You can listen to this podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, any of the 39 platforms where you find this or any of your favorite podcasts. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And again, we talked about this a little bit last week. Make sure you, if you're interested in being involved in the show, it's going to get hectic when we get to football. In fact, we were just talking, Evan and I, about that. It's going to be so much fun to get to football season. We've done this show. What number is this now? 54, probably? 54 shows without football to talk about. I mean, we talk about football, as you know, but we haven't had football season to talk about. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we're just going to talk about college football, which is my favorite thing in the world. All right. Let us go now to the Zoom. I've got working on a Zoom sponsor as well. Yeah. Evan cocked his eyebrow right there. And we'll talk to the great Zach Abolverdi from the Gainesville Sun. I know you've been busy. It's been so weird to me because like they opened up where you can go on campus and you can do all this on, what was it, June 1st, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And now it's like every day committing, visiting, doing this. It's like everybody's trying to shove in a year's worth of recruiting visits into the last month.
Yeah, it does feel that way, Pat, and it's just been crazy since the month turned over and the quiet period has gone into effect. We haven't seen this type of on-campus recruiting happening for the Gators in quite a while. This is the best stretch that they've had under Dan Mullen by far. In terms of the amount of official visitors that they brought in during those first 3 weeks. And then also you look at the results that those official visitors yielded. They've gotten some pledges from a lot of those guys that came to campus, and they also got some of those visitors that come out and said Ford is their leader. So between adding some players to your class and having some other top targets say you're their front runner, you couldn't really ask for better results unless everybody just committed to you. But as you know, Pat, that wasn't going to happen with a lot of these kids, especially the top ones, when they haven't been able to visit any schools in 15 months. They're not going to show up to their first trip or their second trip or third trip and just decide right away.
Right.
So the fact that Florida's even gotten some pledges this month speaks to the job that they've done with getting these guys on campus and impressing them. And they've had 4 this week after not any of the first couple weeks with all those visitors. And you had some Florida fans, not happy about the lack of commitments, but it's starting to catch up now this week.
Well, yeah, but my thing is ABC, always be closing, from Glengarry, Glen Ross. First place you get a new car, second place you get a set of steak knives, third you're fired. So you've still got to get these guys. You got to sign them, and obviously it's a long way even to the early signing period.
Yeah. And really, they need to stop calling it the early signing period, because it's not.
It's signing day. That's what it is.
That is National Signing Day,
yeah.
And what used to be the first Wednesday in February, which was signing day, that's now the late signing period. Let's just call it what it is.
They should call it the cleanup.
Yes, it's the leftovers.
Yes,
basically. So it's definitely changed, but I will say I think Florida's done a good job with some of the moves that they've made in the recruiting department, trying to get the right guys in place from an infrastructure standpoint to just really have everybody functioning and capitalizing on all these guys that they have on staff. And I think Dan Mullen's done a good job of trying to rectify that, because it's been problematic, especially early on in his tenure. But they've really shown some good results out of the gate to start this 2022 cycle. And you have to think, once they get into the fall, if they can have some big visit weekends and show these guys games in the Swamp and maybe get some full crowds back again in Gainesville, that's going to only help them land more players.
Now, I believe in this, and I may be wrong. I may be way off on this. But when you show a kid an artist's rendition of a new football building, he's going to shrug. When you actually show him how huge that steel structure already is, he's going to be a little more impressed. So I don't know if that's helping, just the fact that steel is up there.
Yeah, it's kind of like being able to go into a neighborhood and see new houses going up. It's just it hits you differently when you see it like that. And for the last couple of years, they've been showing all these renderings to recruits, and some of them are probably impressed by what they see and looking down the line that maybe this is what I could enjoy if I came to Gainesville. But for them to now be coming here for on-campus visits and then to have the staff drive them over there to that construction site, and like you said, see how big that thing really is, it makes those renderings and those pictures that they keep showing them feel a little bit more real. And for these guys in the 22 and especially the 23 class, this would be their building. This is not that far off for those guys. It's just crazy. And I remember asking the HBC about this at the topping off ceremony. Ever since he came back to Gainesville as the ambassador in 2016, the whole campus has changed.
Yeah.
They put in the indoor, they renovated Exactech Arena, they knocked down the baseball stadium, they're putting in, this complex. It's not the campus that he knew as a coach and player.
No, especially as a player.
Yeah.
Back in those days, where the O'Connell Center parking lot was just a field. And we used to actually have golf class out there when I was in school. So that only goes back to the late 70s or early 70s. I am pretty old.
Different time.
It was totally different time. Well, let me ask you this: how much do you think Dan Mullen and his staff can go to a guy, bring him in there, and say, "Hey, 2023, we're going to a playoff. Let me show you how we would have been in every playoff since I got here."
Yeah, I really think that's something that they'll drive home to them. And you look at them, I mean, they were already touting the fact that they'd been to 3 straight New Year's Six bowl games,
right?
Which the last one didn't go so great. But Scott Strickland is quick to point out to anyone that'll hear him out. I mean, Florida's the only team that's done that from the SEC. I think maybe one other, but it wasn't Georgia. And it wasn't Alabama either. So that's really impressive. But it's, as you know, Pat, for the top guys, like you said, they want to be able to go compete for a national championship and play in the college football playoff. And the reason why they keep looking at Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and Oklahoma and even Georgia is because those teams have been in the college football playoff. So now to have a 12-team system on the horizon and for you to be able to show, hey, we would have been in the hunt every single year. We're going to continue to be in the hunt. We're still in the top 10. That doesn't make those other, mega programs seem like the only option for these recruits if they want to go compete for a national championship. So that is going to change, I think, recruiting a little bit because Alabama and the Clemsons of the world aren't just going to have this advantage over everybody that they're the only teams that's going to the playoff on a consistent basis.
Yeah, you follow recruiting very closely, and I only know what I see on Twitter, but they've got a few pledges already, and I know they got a kicker. It sounds like a really good kicker. Yesterday they got a 3-star, and I'm like, if they see something in them, then you have to kind of trust your coaches. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know much about it, but who is the one guy? Who is the Tim Tebow, or in one case, the Omar Hunter, which Urban Meyer said, Omar Hunter is the Tim Tebow of this class. We got to get him. And he was a good player. He was okay. But who's the one guy that they really need to get?
Yeah, well, they don't have that player committed yet. They have some top 200 guys. They have some guys that are committed that are really doing a good job of recruiting for the staff, but they don't have any 5-stars committed. They don't even have at this point any top 100 guys. So if you're looking for like a big name, 5-star, top 50 overall prospect, that's still to come. And the fortunate thing for Florida is they have some options there to potentially land guys of that caliber. You look at Evan Stewart, the 5-star wide receiver from Texas, and Walter Nolan, the 5-star defensive tackle from Tennessee. Both of those guys who officially visited Florida in June have come out and publicly said the Gators are my top team. So that's honestly the best comments that you could have got coming from those kids, because neither one of them, recruits of that caliber, were going to make a decision this soon with the recruiting period opening back up. So for them to be saying that, that's certainly an encouraging sign. We'll see if it sticks and it holds once they see some other schools. But if they were to get one of those guys, I really think that would have the type of pool and gain the type of attention that you're talking about, especially if they can get Walter Nolan. I mean, he's the number 2 player in the country. So you get somebody of that caliber, that's going to get attention of other top prospects. And I just think Evan Stewart, being a 5-star wide receiver, playing on the same 7-on-7 team as Florida's quarterback commit, Nick Evers, there's kind of a connection there. If that lead can hold and they land his pledge as well, to me, those would be the 2 players, Pat, that I think could attract other guys. And I think if they get one or both of those guys, you have the potential for really a special 2022 cycle.
Well, and that's the thing, that even though the coaches get the credit or the blame for recruiting class, it's the current players and the commitments that are already committed who have as much to do with getting players to come in.
If not more. if not more. I mean, obviously the coaches are going to be the ones that talk to them the most and build the quote unquote relationship with them. But I think the relationship that they have with the guys that they would be playing with, and then the current players that are already on UF's team, they really sell them and make Florida appealing just as much or more than the coaches, because those are the guys that they're going to be spending their day-to-day with, hanging out outside of football, going out in Gainesville. Like, so to have a sense of what it's like here, and I will give Florida's players credit, man. They are very involved in the recruiting here in this program. I mean, obviously you got players that are official visit hosts at every program, but it seems like Florida's got a handful of guys that are involved pretty much with every single official visit weekend. So they kind of taken it upon themselves to do all they can to help this staff recruit. And between that and the current commits, like, you know, a Julian Humphrey, top 150 corner from Texas, or Nick Evers, who I mentioned, their cornerback commit, that helps you, obviously. I mean, it's great to talk to Dan Mullen. It's great to talk to some of these assistant coaches, but sometimes it takes somebody a little bit closer to your age to relate to you a bit more. And Florida's got that working from all those factors.
How much do you hear from players about NIL and how that may have something to do with where they go, wouldn't it? Not only the school, but the state.
Well, I mentioned Julian Humphrey, Pat, and I don't know if you saw this in the Gainesville Sun. I think it was last week or maybe a couple weeks ago when I had a chance to catch up with him. I was drawn to the fact when I saw him in Gainesville that he had this Julio Island, that's his nickname, is Julio. He had this Julio Island hoodie that was a logo that was already branded that he had designed. So he's already got merchandise. And then come to find out that I'm interviewing this kid, and he's, you know, talking about NLI, and he says, you know, this played a huge part in my decision because Florida's going to be able to allow me to capitalize on this. And he goes, and he just slides it in there saying this. He goes, yeah, you know, if I got over 1 million people following me on social media, I go, what? Because I'd only seen the guy on Twitter, Pat. And it didn't look like he had a lot of followers. And I went to double check his account, and he had like 12,000. And then I went to his Instagram, and he had somewhere around that same number. I'm like, where's this guy talking about 1 million followers? Sure as hell, I look on TikTok. This guy's got 1.3 million followers.
Wow.
Junior in high school with 1.3 million followers on TikTok. So just imagine a guy with that type of brand, with that type of following, and he's already got his own merchandise online. If he makes a pick six in the swamp and gets on SportsCenter's top 10 plays, his online merchandise could sell out that night, you know, and then he could put that highlight on his TikTok, get 5 million views and a ton of revenue from, you know, endorsements and stuff. So he's already mapped this out in his head. It was pretty impressive to see the plan that he's already got in place. And that's where this thing is going, Pat. I mean, for the guys that play wide receiver, cornerback, quarterback, those positions that gain a lot of hype, you know, to be able to play that spot. And if you have a big social media following on TikTok or Instagram, some of these guys are really going to be able to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. And not only is Florida facilitating that, and they're prepared to, but they have advisors and staff in place to go over all of these contracts that these kids could potentially receive and make sure that they're not signing anything shisty, that someone's not trying to scam them. But at the same time, they're trying to also facilitate these opportunities for them. So that's why somebody like Julian Humphrey, who, you know, he's been committed to the Gators for a bit, but he's got a school like Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher trying to get him to stay in state. You know, Texas is dragging their feet with this NLI stuff where Florida's already prepared and ready to go. And that might be one reason why he's, you know, leaving the state of Texas.
All right, Zach, I'll let you go. Let you get back to work. Let you make some more phone calls. I wouldn't want Arnold to get mad at you. I was taking up some of your time, but
this is supposed to be our downtime, Pat, and Florida recruiting has not allowed me to get some downtime. They've just been.
Do your best. I'll have to take you out for beers.
Florida fans want me to stay busy writing commitment stories. That's good news for them.
That's right. Zach, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pat.
All right, Zach Abolverdi from the Gainesville Sun joining us to talk a little recruiting. We're not going to take a break. We're going to go right to our next guest because I got a little bit screwed up there on that break stuff because of me. It's my fault. That's not shocking in its own right. But we're going to now talk to a good friend of mine, Ralph Russo from the Associated Press, the sports writer for the Associated Press who covers college football. This is the guy I deal with all the times, or used to deal with, although I'm out as a poll voter now because I don't work for a newspaper, and that's depressing the hell out of me, Ralph. I'm sorry.
We of course loved having you aboard, and we certainly miss you. You were always a diligent and a very effective voter, and reliable, which is the most important thing. Because the last thing we want to have to do on a Sunday morning is go searching for Pat Dooley. But you were always good about getting the votes in, and you're always really diligent about the work you put in for us. So, but you know what? I'm sure it's nice to have your Sunday mornings a little more free, right?
Yeah, actually it is. I don't know yet.
In general.
That's right. Well, let's look. The changing landscape of college football is something you've probably thought you'd have an easy summer, but it hasn't been. You know, if we talk about NIL, we talk about transfer portal, and you can transfer one time without sitting out. We talk about this playoff that obviously is coming down the road. I mean, we can pick which one to talk, but let's start. It was something somebody was talking about today about the NIL, how at some of these schools now you can say, hey, you might want to choose between UCF and Minnesota, but we've got a better chance of going to the playoff at UCF. And so you might want to stay where it's sunny and, you know, and so they're going to be able to use that to their advantage.
All these things are intertwined in different ways. But I will say this. I don't know, like we can do a lot of speculation about how, but I think the fascinating thing will be watching it play out to see how much are kids going to make recruiting decisions based on NIL after things sort of settle in and they realize, oh, well, it's really kind of on me to make this work. Like my social media following to increase my value, no matter where I am, is still going to be on me. I have a story coming out next week about two female basketball players at Fresno State who are probably better positioned than most quarterbacks in the SEC to just do great with NIL. So I think there's a ton of, well, what if this, what if that, how will it affect this, how will it affect that? And I think all of those concerns or speculation are interesting and in some ways warranted, but I think there's a lot of unknown here, especially tied to athlete behavior and the behaviors of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, which, as you know, if you've ever been around them, can be pretty unpredictable.
Well, I've got a 20-year-old right now in school, so
there you go.
I know the predictability issue. But that is kind of fascinating to me, is so much is being made out of all these different things, and the landscape certainly has changed. But it's not like Alabama's going to get better players than they have now, or Clemson's going to get better players than they have now, and they still can only put 11 on the field at the same time. It's not like now they can put 13. So I just think maybe some teams can close the gap slightly, but as long as Nick Saban's still at Alabama, they're not going to close it drastically.
Yeah, I think any argument, whether it's about NIL, other payments to athletes, because listen, after what happened with the NCAA's Supreme Court case, I don't think NIL is going to be the end of it, because the Supreme Court basically blew a massive hole in all of the NCAA's previous arguments of, hey, this is why we can't pay them. This is why we need this particular model. So I think, we're heading towards a future where there's probably some more money coming down the road for these athletes. I'm not sure how that will look, but I think there's some more. But any argument based on competitive balance, especially in college football, really in all college sports, because there are, outliers within college baseball. You'll see, a College of Charleston, I think it was, or maybe it was Coastal Carolina a few years ago, and East Carolina has done pretty well. But in all college sports, listen, there's haves and have-nots, and we see the schools in the Power Five win most of the championships. The Gonzagas aside, they're outliers in basketball. But in football especially, there is very little balance. There has never really been much balance. It's really lopsided and top-heavy now. But you need 85 players, and it's just hard to get 85 good ones. And the same schools have been good. There's a reason why Alabama hasn't just been good under Nick Saban. It's been good for decades, right? It's funny that you were on my podcast earlier today, right? And we talked about the significant change in the 80s and 90s of all of a sudden the state of Florida became a powerhouse in college football, not just Miami first, then UF, FSU. But if you look back in the history, like the reason why that was such a monumental shift is because, all of a sudden a lot of people were moving to Florida. Like that wasn't the case for years and years and years. So college football is sort of set into the big brands, and here are the teams that can compete for championships. And it's very rare that you get a shift in there. So that's a really long-winded way of me saying, like, these other changes, to think that they're going to be the thing that tips it and they're going to create a competitive balance that is unacceptable. I mean, where you been? It's never been competitively balanced.
Well, you mentioned the Supreme Court, which basically never agrees on anything, but they agreed on this and basically told the NCAA, you guys have screwed this whole thing up. And I'm trying to gauge what the impact of that ruling was. I'm not very smart, so maybe you can tell me better the impact, because the first thing they said was, well, now you can buy a laptop for a student athlete and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that's not a big deal. Why was this such a big deal?
Yeah, I think the immediate impact, two things. It's sort of short-term, long-term. The immediate impact of the ruling that the court upheld was a pretty narrow ruling. As you said, education benefits provided to athletes, you can't cap them. You can't cap the price. So, you're right. A laptop could be a $20,000 laptop. I don't know where that is, but maybe you could find a $20,000 laptop to give a five-star running back. Yeah. So, study abroad, things along those lines. So, but in the grand scheme of things, again, talking about the competitive balance and where recruits go, I don't know if that was a huge problem for the NCAA. To sort of get its arms around that, they can define, the schools and the conferences, the NCAA can define what an educational benefit is. They just can't cap the price on it. Okay. The bigger issue was long-term. And basically what the NCAA said is, everything that you've argued, or what the Supreme Court said to the NCAA is, everything that you have argued in the past to defend yourself against antitrust lawsuits is a big pile of BS. It's just, it doesn't work here. Like, you have been a serial, I'll use Jay Billis gave me this line, the NCAA is a serial antitrust offender. So what the Supreme Court said is, we can only deal with the case in front of us, but we're just going to tell you everything that you do is up for dispute. We're not giving you cover here. The 1984 case involving the Board of Regents, NCAA, which allowed schools to sell their own TV rights, and that begat big conferences. You were using that for a long time to sort of defend your rules of not paying players, and that's gone. You're a different organization now. This is a $1 billion operation. We're saying that is dicta, is the legal term that's been thrown at to me by lawyers. So the problem with the Supreme Court ruling for the NCAA is it stripped down its defenses. It basically said everything you've used before to defend yourself, that's out the window. And by the way, you are open for lawsuit business. We are basically telling everybody, if you think you got a case against the NCAA, come on down, because we think all of your rules are broken.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I thought, but I'm glad you could explain it to me in layman's language. Let me ask you this, though. Were you surprised that they came out and said, not the NCAA, obviously, but the I guess it was the board of, was it the Board of Governors? Anyway, they said, we're going to take this summer and try to make sure this playoff is what we want. That it's, do we need to tweak stuff? I mean, they can't walk back the 12-team playoff. It's too late for that. But were you surprised that they said, hey, let's think about this for a while?
Well, no, but here's why. I think we're heading to this 12-teamer. They did not work on this, the commissioners and Jack Swarbrick, the AD at Notre Dame, for 2 years to have them told, no, we're just going to throw that in the garbage and not do anything about it. And you're right, it's not the NCAA. It's basically a committee of presidents, right? The NCAA has no involvement with the playoff. I always like to throw that out there because we blame the NCAA for a lot of things, but let's not blame them for that too.
No.
I think we're going to end up with the 12-team playoff. I think the slow rolling at this point, because they came out with a splash, right? I was even surprised a couple of weeks back. I had been, somebody had tipped me earlier in the day, hey, something's coming. And I figured, all right, well, they'll give a framework. They'll give a blueprint here. But they gave the whole kit and caboodle, right? It was a a very detailed plan. And I was a little surprised that they played their hand so strongly that early. But what it also told me is, like, again, if you're showing me this whole thing, this means this is where we're going. I think the slowing down of the process now is to, it's fair. They have to get some information to see if this thing can be implemented. There's going to be a lot of work around getting it implemented. I think there's also a PR aspect of this of, hey man, we don't want to be seen as like jamming this down people's throats. We want to make sure we're talking to the athletes, especially the athletes. We're talking to the coaches. We're talking to the ADs. It's to create this perception, and maybe it's a fair perception, that like it's not just 12 people in a room making this decision on their own. They want this because it's college sports. We always have to be very collaborative, and we want to hear everybody's voices. So they're trying to create the process where they're going to hear people's voices. Though skeptical me kind of thinks like, yeah, we're going to hear you out, but ultimately this is the plan and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, the one thing I wonder is whether we will actually see 2023. That it may be that they'll find reasons to keep pushing it back a little bit.
I think, Pat, that will come down to television rights. So to flip this thing in 2023, the contract with ESPN runs through 2025, right? If you flip it early, well, they're not going to give ESPN all these great, cool new playoff games for nothing, right? So to flip it, that also means we have to renegotiate with ESPN, create a new television contract. The problem with doing it early is, while their contract is in place, the CFP can only negotiate with ESPN. It's an exclusive window.
They can't bring in Fox and everybody else, yeah.
Yeah, and listen, you don't get the most until you bring it to market, right? And I think that's the sort of, anytime you hear them get asked about 2023 and when they'll implement the thing, always remember that answer is directly tied to a negotiation, to a television negotiation. So no matter what they say publicly, they understand that they have to get into a room with ESPN at some point and determine. And if they came out and say, yeah, we're really motivated to get this thing implemented by 2023. Well, ESPN hears that and says, oh, well, you're really motivated, huh? Well, in that case, maybe we don't need to give you X number hundred of million. We can give you a little less because you really want this thing going and you can only negotiate with us right now. So I think 2023 is possible. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think that it's all tied to how they can get on the same page with ESPN.
It almost sounds like David Letterman went over to CBS. I don't know, for some reason. Because I watched that movie about 100 times. The
Late Show. Late Show, was it?
Late Shift, I think. Or was it Late
Shift? Yes.
Whatever it was.
Tremendous.
Yeah, great movie. Hey, Ralph, you're great too, and we appreciate your time. And hopefully during football season we can get you on to talk some actual football and not initials and playoffs and possibilities and everything. But we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, Pat, between NIL, NCAA, CFP, SCOTUS, it's been a really busy June. But here's the cool thing, Pat. I keep looking at that schedule and for next September and thinking about a real full football season. Can't wait.
With full stands, which makes it even better. Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, Ralph Russo from the Associated Press, who is the lead writer on college football, does a great job, tremendous job. He's one of those guys I turn to whenever I got questions, and I kind of had some questions, as you can tell, where I'm not fully understanding, but now I understand a little better. And right now, we will take a break. When we come back, the Adams Ribco to Go Mount Rushmore that we've been doing all summer here. Is this summer, technically? Oh, okay, I just know it's raining, so it must be summer. Today, it's going to be men's golf. And this was maybe the hardest fourth one I've ever had to pick. We got that. We got the Leonardo's of Millhopper Quick Picks. We'll talk about that as well. 3 things brought to you by Hand Law. All that coming up here and more on Another Dooley Noted Podcast.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from Another Dooley Noted Podcast. And this is a great Adam brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adams Ribco to Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where, everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adams Ribco to Go. Come on down and enjoy it. This is Pat Dooley, and I want to tell you about my friends at the Gainesville Quarterback Club. I'm a member, and you should be too. It's the oldest Gator booster club in the world and a great place to meet new friends, network with prominent business people, and hear a great collection of speakers, including Dan Mullen, throughout the football season. Go ahead and give John Stevens a call at 352-222-8516 or sign up on the website, quarterbackclub.org. Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI, and to our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. Okay, welcome back to Another Dooley Noted Podcast. Again, Monday we will have Cole Kubelik on, along with another guest. I'm still working on a couple of different people. And then Friday, Steve Mercandane will join us again, along with Robbie Andrew. We always love Robbie coming on. And then the following Monday, Bruce Feldman, who does a great job for The Athletic, and Chris Harry. Chris, we can get a little update on where Florida is basketball-wise from Chris Harry as well. And we're going to continue to line up guests. We're going to we got a couple big ones that we just trying to work out times and stuff like that. And then we'll keep bringing them to you because, that's the thing. The summer is when you kind of obviously interest in college football slowly builds up, and then you get to September, and as Ralph was saying, you start thinking about that first weekend of college football, and it's unbelievable. So I look forward to that. All right, we're going to do right now 3 things presented by Hand Law, a Florida law firm which helps clients with government. You can learn more about Hand Law. I should have this memorized by now. You can learn more about Hand Law by visiting its website, www.hand.law. The firm is available for consultation in Jacksonville. So we appreciate Hand Law and their sponsorship of 3 things. Number 1, and I wrote about this a little bit in on WRUF.com, where I write a couple columns a week on there. The Pro Football Focus came out with what they consider the toughest schedule in college football this year. And they do a lot of these list type things, and lists are lists. And I've been doing all these lists every week for Gators Wire, and you can have a difference of opinion. That's fine. But the number 1 toughest schedule in the country, according to them, is Arkansas's. So I looked. I said, well, man, Arkansas. Who do they have in non-conference? Well, they have Texas. Okay, Texas. I don't know how good Texas is going to be. Well, there's teams that play tougher non-conference because this is the thing. It's weird this year. I don't know if it's weird. It's life the way it kind of has been and won't be in the future. In the future, we've already seen all these different schools, all these different smart athletic directors go out and get different teams. As we all know about Florida. Florida's playing Texas. Florida's playing Notre Dame. Florida's playing Miami. All these are home and homes. Colorado, Cal. Getting those Power 5 teams on your schedule. And in fact, I think there's one year where Georgia has nothing but Power 5 teams. I can't remember what year that is, like 28 or something like that. Anyway, but that's the way it is now. But this year is kind of different. Again, I said that the wrong way twice. It's back to normal in that everybody's got one Power 5 team on their schedule, except Georgia, which actually has 2, and there's a reason for that. They offered them the Clemson game. It's a huge payout. It's obviously a great way to get eyes on your program. That's the opening game of the year, and then you close with Georgia Tech, which you play every year. Florida, of course, only has the 1, although at least they're playing USF, which is, it's an American Athletic Conference team, and that's not the worst thing in the world. And they're playing FAU, but they're playing Samford. But these are schedules the way they used to be. You play kind of some nobodies, and then you play one really good team. Florida, of course, playing FSU at the end of the year, which probably hurts Florida's strength of schedule. In fact, the SEC has 5 of the top 10 schedules in terms of toughness. You know why? Because they have to play SEC teams. That's why. You know why Arkansas's got the toughest schedule? They don't get to play Arkansas. That's number 1. It's like I'm surprised Vandy doesn't have the toughest schedule because they don't get to play Vandy. But it is interesting it kind of made me get fired up about football by going and looking at everybody's schedule in the SEC. And, I think everybody's pretty much falls in line. But when you're in the West and you're the lower part of the West, like Arkansas, I think Arkansas may struggle this year. I'm not sure they're going to be as good as they were last year. But when you're in the West and you're in the lower part, that means everybody ahead of you is really good, And if you're playing in the East, that's not so much the case because if you're, Tennessee, well, who are you playing? You're playing Florida and Georgia, good programs. Kentucky, iffy. And then, Missouri, I don't know how good Missouri will be. But if you're Arkansas, you're playing Alabama, which is the number 1 program in the country. Texas A&M, which probably should have been in the playoffs last year, might be better this year, even without Kellen Mond. You add in LSU, which won the national championship 2 years ago. I mean, Auburn, new coach I know, but still it's Auburn. that's one reason the perception, at least, is that they have a really tough schedule, and they probably do. That's the way the SEC is. The SEC is, and by the way, they also, Arkansas has played Georgia on the other side. And that's the thing with Florida. Florida's schedule was not in the top 10, and I'm like, well, they get LSU and Alabama from the West, and they got to play Georgia. Again, FSU may bring them down. FSU's schedule actually was listed as the 10th toughest schedule, and that's because they play Florida and Notre Dame to start the season. Think about that, the bookends for FSU season. Notre Dame to start, Florida to finish. All right, number 2 on the 3 things presented by Hand Law. Jay Johnson is the new coach at LSU. We have heard a million names, including Kevin O'Sullivan's, and in the end they went with the coach at Arizona, who's done a pretty good job out there. Seems like a weird fit only in that he's been a West Coast guy his whole life, and now he's going to be in the SEC. It's a tough job. It's a great job, but it's a hard job. Like, there are some jobs that you kind of fall into, and it's great. You're going to do good no matter what you do. But I think the LSU job, the pressure there is probably as tough as it is in any baseball situation. So Jay Johnson is a new guy that we don't like and I've never met the guy, and I don't know much about him. But he's at LSU. I think I'd let a little bit of the Jeff Cardozo hatred for LSU spill over into me sometimes. And finally, number 3 on 3 things by Hand Law. The NBA playoffs have been fascinating to me, and actually I think their ratings are pretty good considering these aren't the market teams. You want an LA, New York Knicks, final. You want those teams to stay in it, but the ratings have been pretty good because the players have been fun to watch. And I think we've learned, it's almost been like college basketball, where you watch the March Madness and you like, I never heard anything about this guy during the year, this guy at X school X. But now you see him, man, he's really good. So what we've seen is Trae Young be ridiculous all through the playoffs. I did not realize, and this is, again, how little of an NBA fan I am until the playoffs. And then often I don't watch all the playoffs because they play so late, and I'm an old man and I got to get to bed. I did not realize that the nickname for Trae Young is Ice Trae. That's pretty cool. I like that nickname. All right, that is 3 things presented by Hand Law. And time now for the Adams Ribco to go. Mount Rushmore for golf today. Men's golf. We still can do women's golf. We still can do, I think gymnastics is coming up next. But anyway, men's golf. And this was a hard one because obviously Florida's got a great track record in men's golf. Won 4 national championships. So I went first with Bob Murphy. And that's old school. And for you that aren't even that old school, he used to be a commentator as well. That adds to this a little bit. But Bob Murphy was a great player, won the USAM, won the SEC, just a tremendous player, and won a national championship as an individual at Florida. And that's why I'm also putting this guy on there, and this may be controversial. But you guys, anybody who knows him loves him. He's one of the greatest guys in the world. But Nick Gillum makes my list because he won the national championship, 2001, or was it 2000? 2001. And was a really good player. So I don't care what you did as a pro. It's what you did when you were in school, and when you win a national championship. There's only been 2 of them in the history of Florida golf. As great as it's been. Those were the 2. Number 3, I had Gary Koch on here, who was part of a national championship team, won the SEC individual championship twice. Love Gary Koch. He's a great guy. Great announcer, of course. Better than most. All right, so the hard part was picking the 4th one. Really hard. Buddy Alexander won 2 national championships. One of my best friends. I love Buddy. Tommy Aaron won 2 SEC championships. They also won a Masters. Chris DeMarco, we love Chris DeMarco. Steve Melnick won the USAM and the SEC. All great players. I can't put Andy North in this category, and you know why? The guy won 2 U.S. Opens and was a really good player at Florida. he couldn't care less about Florida. He's a Wisconsin guy all the way. He's from Wisconsin. That's the team he roots against the Gators. That shot that Chiozza made me so happy because I knew it burned Andy North. Couldn't put him in there. Calcavecchi is another guy I consider, but you know I ended up going with Buster Bishop, who was the head coach back in the 60s when Florida was kind of getting this program to, although Conrad Railing was a great coach as well. Buster Bishop, I don't know how many of you know this, won the first ever national championship at Florida in any sport. Florida's now won 42 or whatever it is in national championships. He won the first one and won 2 overall. So he's on Mount Rushmore. So again, I hope you guys are enjoying these Mount Rushmores. You may disagree, and if you do, let me know. Gymnastics coming up next on Monday on the Adams Ribco to go. Just ate there. Went there and got food Wednesday. Yeah, it was really good. Just go by, boom, pick it up, walk out, take it home, eat it. It's a great deal that they've got going up there. Adams Ribco to go, right up there on 43rd Street, and we love Adam to death. What have I forgotten anything? Oh, the Leonardo's and Millhopper Quick Picks. How could I forget that? Well, the reason I forgot it a little bit, not totally, is we're not going to do a quick pick today. And the reason we're not going to do it is I screwed up mentally and didn't realize we don't know how many SEC teams will be in the final of the NCAA tournament yet, because they had a rain out yesterday. They've still got games to play. We got to see what happens. Could be 2, could be 1, could be 0. So we'll find out. So we're just going to take a break today, and there's so many people who have already qualified for this that we got plenty of names to put in the hopper. And then on Monday, we'll draw one. The only way we wouldn't be able to draw it is if we had still more rain on Saturday and Sunday. So hopefully they get that done, and we know how many teams are in from the SEC. And we appreciate Kyle so much over at Leonardo's at Millhopper. In fact, I'm going to go talk to him probably this weekend, or maybe early next week, about doing some other things and making sure we have some gift cards to put in the package that the winner will get. All right, running late again. I don't know how I come in here and I think, oh man, I don't know if I got enough to talk about. I end up talking too much and run a little late, but appreciate Evan so much, and we will be back with another edition of the show on Monday. Again, Cole Kubelik will join us. We'll have another guest as well. Until then, I am Pat Dooley. I'm deep, I'm way back, and I am out of here.